I have a very busy day tomorrow working, so I wanted to make the YouTube video tonight. So I'm going to be reading the calendar since creation as per the Jewish people. And it's from a book called the Shevatim. There's tons of records of this and in tons of Jewish books. But the one that I'm reading, the one that I'll be sharing this to you from is called the Shevatim, which means the tribes, by Moshe Polter. So in 3760, the year is the beginning of the civil calendar. So if you want to make, this is just an intro. If you want to figure out, according to the secular dating system in the BCE, deduct it from 3760. So for 3,760 years, it was not zero yet, right? And then one started. So let's say the flood, Noah's flood, the flood and the ark is the year 1656. We would do 3760 minus 1656. And you get 2104 BCE, before Common Era. To calculate how many years ago, you add whatever number it is to today's civil calendar to 2104. So, in other words, let's say today is 2024. So we have 2104 plus, that's how many years before Common Era the flood was, and this is how we know how many years ago, plus we now have after Common Era 2024, which gives us 4,128. So when we look at the flood, for example, the Indians corroborate with a silver age that starts at 2204, and the Chinese place it at 2200, and Assyrian names of leaders can be traced back to shortly before 2200. The North American content so in other words, there were different groups of people that sort of talk about this event. The North American continent, which is Alaska to Mexico, shows an ocean covered it, and the Himalayas and other mountain ranges covered with innumerable deep sea fossils. These are all ways to say that the flood covered the North American continent, and it's measurable by deep sea fossils. After the flood, Noah's three sons, Shem, which is the Semitic people eastward, Ham, the African people southward, and looking at like where Israel is kind of. So east, Shem, the Semitic people, like all of the Middle East. And then you have Ham, which is the African people, it's all south. And you have European, which is Yafes, the northward. There's 10 generations, Avram, and then the left is the ocean, is the water. So you have 10 generations from Abraham, the father. He was called Ivri, which is the first Jew, right? The first Ivri. We have Hebrew, and Hebrew is Ivrit. So cognate, and Hebrew comes from the word Ivri. He is like related to and then b is the same letter in Hebrew, and ri, right? So every Hebrew, Ivrim, ever means side, because Avram was on a different side than the rest of society's cultures. There was like paganism at that point, and with Sarah they birthed the Jewish people. So Avram is like the father of many. It says Rav, Avraham, and it's like also that it was created through him. So there's 10 generations from him from Noah to Abraham, 10 generations after the flood. 500 years after Avram's birth, at the year 2448, the Jews became, not 2448 before Common Era, the year 2448, the Jews became an official nation after the exodus from Egypt. And under leadership of Yehoshua after Moses, they reached the land of Canaan in 2488, 40 years after. Moses led them through the desert for 40 years, then Joshua led them in to Israel. They battled for 7 years to conquer the entire land. King Solomon died in 2964. So that's approximately, let's say, just under 500 years. And his sons didn't give in to the people for tax relief, so the 10 tribes rebelled. There was 12 tribes. They became misled by the kings and refused to let citizens serve Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash, God. Solomon created the temple, the first temple, because of his father David, King David. And all were united under them until, as mentioned, they refused to let the citizens go serve God in the Holy Temple. They were punished into captivity in the year 3205 by Shalmaneser, king of Assyria. leaving the Jews to be made up of Yehuda and Binyamin, and some of Levi, although some of the other Jews from the other tribes who emigrated prior to captivity were there, and they were divided into 3 groups according to the Agadic tradition. Agadic meaning the spoken, shared culture. So one is on this side of the river Sambacha, and one is on the other side, and third is in the neighborhood of Daphne near Antioch. So Shlomo had so many huge construction projects. So he was able to ask for a lot of taxes, and even people gave their time, months of the year. So anyway, in 19th century, Eldad ben Mali Hadani, there was Dan, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali that are said to be in Ethiopia, also known as Chavila, and Zvulun and Reuven in Paran mountains, and Ephraim and half of Manasseh in southern Arabia, and Shimon and the other half of Manasseh in the land of the Khazars. David Reuveni said, I'm sharing different sources of material, so where that they were located, where these tribes ended up, and how we could say from the source till then. So anyway, next, so that was the first few tribes that from the 10. Then David Reuveni said he was related to the king of the tribes of Reuven, situated in the Kebar in northern Arabia. Abraham Farisol assumed the Bnei Israel of India are from the 10. Assumed from the Bnei Israel of India is from the 10 tribes, the 10 lost tribes. Dan is associated with Denmark, and Tuatha de Danuim of Irish tradition. The theory of the British is associated with the 10 tribes. It's the theory of the Afghans. Then we have N. MacLeod has a theory of the Japanese. There's the theory of Australia. By the way, these are all saying that these are some of the tribes, or from the 10 lost tribes. The Messiah of East Africa identified of the British as the tribes of East British Africa. Right. So the British part, British East Africa, identified as of the tribes of the similarity of their customs. Garcia declares that the tribes passed over the Bering Strait to Mexico and South America, and identifies Hebrew as the Aboriginal American language. Viscount Kingsborough says Mexicans are descendants of the 10 tribes. And finally, one last thing I will share. Actually, I'll share 3. One being that Menashe ben Israel concluded that the Aboriginal inhabitants of America were 10 lost tribes. Charles Beatty says that he found Israelite origin in the Delaware Indians. And J.B. Finlay claimed that the 10 lost tribes among the Wyandottes, also considered by George Stateland, and that the discoveries of the alleged Hebrew tablets in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, support the theory. So, just find it really fascinating and wanted to share it. So, I wish you a blessed day, blessed Tuesday, happiness, joy, and peace, and to recognize that we all may be long-lost brothers and sisters, and the tribes of America might be Jewish, and also Mexico, Japan, Australia, and many other places.